You're watching This Week in Space with Miles O'Brien.
Hello and welcome to This Week in Space. Thanks for joining us. We begin with the view from space, which got a lot more spectacular this week as the Joint Station Shuttle team bolted on the Tranquility node with its 7-windowed cupola. Would that the NASA nation could see the future as clearly as this. The cupola is supposed to be there to make it easier for station keepers to operate the robot arm, but you can bet they'll have to keep the Windex handy to clean the smudges from their noses flattened against the glass.
And arguably, mankind has been after this view for centuries, this perspective, this view of the world. And we finally have it, and we are going to take advantage and enjoy it.
At the cupola ribbon-cutting ceremony, station keeper Jeff Williams and shuttle boss George Zamka paused to remember the late Lacey Veach, an astronaut who died of cancer in 1995 and who participated in the cupola's initial design. They also installed a plaque with some small moon rocks picked up by Neil Armstrong in 1969 and then carried to the summit of Mount Everest by astronaut Scott Parazynski this past spring.
They will be placed in the cupola as a reminder of man's reach and man's grit as they go out and explore.
Before the Endeavour astronauts departed the station, they took a call from President Obama. It was the first time the president has found himself in the space since he rolled out his controversial new NASA budget that cancels the Constellation project. Obama offered major props to the crew.
We just wanted to let you know that the amazing work that's being done on the International Space Station, not only by our American astronauts, but also our colleagues from Japan and Russia, is just a testimony to human ingenuity, a testimony to extraordinary skill and courage that you guys bring to bear, and is also a testimony to why continued space exploration is so important, and is part of the reason why my commitment to NASA is unwavering.
More on NASA's new direction and the retrograde of recriminations in a bit. But before STS-130 is history, we got to show you a couple of pictures. Check out this one. That's the pre-dawn launch of Endeavour back on February 8th as seen from the Intracoastal Waterway Bridge in Ponte Vedra, Florida. Now that's about 115 miles north of the launch site. Thanks to James Vernicatola for that. And here's another. That's Endeavour on final approach to the ISS just before docking. Check out the layers of the atmosphere. Now, for the record, blue is the mesosphere, white is the stratosphere, and orange is the troposphere. Kind of looks like a parfait, doesn't it? Paraphrasing a famous donkey, parfait's got to be the tastiest thing on or off the whole damn planet. It's cold up there above the troposphere and also on the ground at the Cape. So how cold was it? So cold they couldn't move the shuttle Discovery, and that means a 2.5-week launch delay. For the first time anyone can remember, the shuttle team canceled a move out of Discovery's hangar into the unheated vehicle assembly building on account of cold. Apparently, sub-45-degree weather can cause the thrusters on the orbiter to spring leaks. The delay forced shuttle program managers to postpone the launch date until after a Russian Soyuz docking at the station. The shuttle launch is now set for April 5th. So who will have the last word on what NASA does next in space? Maybe some powerful members of Congress. At least that is what Constellation supporters are hoping this week as they move from the shock and denial to the anger and bargaining stage of grief. I checked in with the exiled president of the Constellation Nation, Mike Griffin. This is the first time we've spoken since the Obama budget rolled out. What was your immediate reaction to it?
Well, I guess my first reaction was I didn't think that I would live to see a worse presidential decision concerning the U.S. space program than President Nixon's decision to cancel Apollo.
So you would put it in that category?
I would. And then, at least, NASA had the space shuttle coming up in front of it. Now, at this point, NASA really has nothing except to be a funding conduit to private enterprise. And I think the goals of the U.S. space program have to lie above and beyond that which is suitable for private enterprise.
Well, it's interesting you should say that because you, of all the NASA administrators, have the breadth and depth of experience in the commercial sector. You have pushed for the commercial sector to become a player in space. What's the matter with NASA stepping aside and allowing this industry to flourish?
Well, that's the two words that are the problem are stepping aside. See, you're quite correct. I completely agree with the value of enlightened government policy to stimulate the development of commercial space. For that to be done at the expense of or through the elimination of government space is a mistake.
I know you're not proud of this in some sense. You've spent a lot of time in Washington in front of those congressional committees, and this is where the debate moves now. Do you think there's going to be significant change coming out of Congress? And will this ultimately, you mentioned the space station Freedom was canceled, and large pieces of it are alive and well and in orbit on the International Space Station, large pieces of that design. Do you think we're going to have a Freedom scenario here?
Miles, I don't know, and I wouldn't care to predict what the Congress of the United States will do. I strongly hope that the Congress decides that this is an occasion to just say no, as it were. The two successive Congresses, one Republican and one Democratic, have approved the current plan for NASA, and I'd like to see them stick to it. The decision confronting the Congress is not whether or not to pick some different rocket design. You talk about pieces of Constellation maybe going forward. That's not the point. The point is whether there is going to be a U.S. government space program involving humans in space exploration that is above and beyond what it is that contractors find to be in their personal interest.
Is it possible to do all the things you want to do, Constellation and the like, and still create a healthy, commercial, private sector that goes to and from space?
Probably not. It is not NASA's job to create, as you put it, a healthy private sector. It is the job of the private sector to create itself and furnish goods and services to the government. Now, the best way to achieve that is to have a vibrant government program out on the frontier, doing missions, building new research stations, heading toward Mars, and then having the commercial sector decide that they can do some of the necessary things cheaper than government. And I believe they can. I strongly believe they can. But on their own, to raise the money necessary, carry out the product development necessary to provide service to government. That's what the free market is all about. I am the strongest possible supporter of free market activity in space. I'm not a supporter of creating new prime contractors who want to be labeled commercial.
Are you discouraged at the way things are headed?
Miles, I'm never discouraged. I'm the most optimistic person in the world. You can't find, you can't be in the space business and be a pessimist. I think this decision by President Obama's administration reflects the extremely poor quality of the advice the president is getting. I hope the Congress, in its role as an equal branch of government, will choose to provide better advice.
Are you, at this point, do you have some criticism to levy at Administrator Bolden and his staff in handling this?
I have absolutely no criticism for Charlie Bolden. He is a good friend and a great human being and as smart a guy as you'll run across. Charlie is clearly not in charge of this decision and in fact really shouldn't be. As I mentioned many times to you personally, Miles, when I was administrator, the heads of federal executive agencies do not get to determine national policy. That is not how our government works. The elected officials in the administration and in Congress determine what it is that federal agencies will do, and then those agencies go forward and execute. So my comment is not direct. My comments are not directed at Charlie. Far from it. This is an administration decision. It is a bad decision for the United States, and I will say that to all who care to hear it. And I very much hope that the Congress will see this as I do, as they have seen it in the past, and will turn down this aspect of the president's budget.
Mike Griffin, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Miles. Take care.
And more proof this week, Constellation may be star-crossed. A boilerplate version of the space capsule that was part of the program cratered in a drop test in Arizona. No official explanation from NASA or Lockheed Martin, and no pictures either. Despite its planned cancellation, work on Constellation is actually continuing for the time being until it can be shut down in an orderly fashion. And that'll cost us $2.5 billion. Guess that is Constellation's golden parachute. At least it's working. And over on the commercial side of the gantry, the folks at SpaceX now say March 22nd is the tentative date for the launch of the Falcon 9. They've already rolled out the rocket to the pad. A dress rehearsal and test firing are planned in the coming days. SpaceX CEO Elon Musk says the rocket will actually be ready to go on March 8th, but there is final work to be done on the flight termination system. It's designed to destroy the rocket with explosives if it veers off course towards, say, Titusville. Coming up, NASA's sudden course change to embrace the likes of SpaceX has astro entrepreneurs like Eric Anderson of Space Adventures flying high. He sees the new policy as an out-of-this-world opportunity. He'll tell us all about it when we return. Welcome back to This Week in Space. Some call it the Death Star, and I guess I can see why. These new Cassini spacecraft images of Saturn's moon Mimas were shot February 13th during a flyby that skirted the little moon by just 5,900 miles. That's the Herschel crater, 88 miles wide, and obviously the result of a massive impact of some sort. Researchers hope these new images can help them learn more about it, in particular how old it is and how the moon dodged being blasted to bits when it was formed. And in other flyby news, the European Space Agency's Mars Express has its instruments trained on Mars's moon Phobos. Mars Express will pass by the moon several times in the coming weeks, culminating on March 3rd, when the spacecraft will skim just over 30 miles above the surface. Scientists hope to use the data gathered by Mars Express to learn more about the moon's origin. Is it a captured asteroid, or did it form at the same time as Mars? Or is it made up of debris kicked up when a massive meteorite struck the planet, making Phobos the celestial equivalent of a dust bunny? Which brings us down to the surface of the red planet and the Energizer Bunny Spirit. The rover no more, does that make it a roved? Is hunkered down to ride out a long Martian winter. You may recall Spirit has been stuck for months in a sand trap called Troy near an area called Home Plate. Spirit's human handlers at the Jet Propulsion Lab threw in the towel on trying to free it a few weeks ago. They decided it was time to focus on tilting Spirit so its solar panels can soak up as much sun as possible. But try as they might, Operation Spirit Tilt was a bust, meaning the bunny would soon be playing polar bear, hibernating maybe as long as 6 months. So what can you say except good night, sweet Spirit, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite, and hang in there until spring, okay? Don't give up on us. The Chandra Space Telescope has beamed down an amazing shot of a supernova in the Andromeda Galaxy, and you don't have to strain to see it. This is a Type 1A supernova, meaning it must be an overachiever. The shot is a composite of X-ray, infrared, and optical images. Astrophysicists are interested in knowing more about 1As because it might help them unlock the riddle of dark energy, the unknown stuff that plays a role in accelerating the expansion of the universe. And in another corner of space, the new WISE spacecraft took this shot of Andromeda. No great shake scientifically, but you really never get tired of good spiral galaxy pictures, do you? WISE also snagged this shot of the comet Sliding Spring, an apt name in this long, cold winter. It is the winter of discontent for Constellationites. We've heard a little while ago from their fearless leader, Mike Griffin. Now let's check in with the reigning king of space tourism. Eric Anderson has been right in the middle of every multi-million-dollar deal to send civilians on Russian rockets to the International Space Station. He's always been bullish on the space business, but never more than now. Eric Anderson, thanks for being with us on This Week in Space. We talked with Mike Griffin a little while ago, and he says the Obama budget is essentially a death knell for NASA and for the space program as we know it. How do you respond to that?
Well, Miles, I actually think that the new plan is brilliant. I believe that the focus on developing commercial capability will, in fact, be seen in the future as one of the masterstrokes of U.S. space policy.
A masterstroke. Interesting. Tell me about that.
Well, look, we're building the railroads to space. I mean, we all love to see things like Apollo, where we go and explore new worlds, and we love to dream about going to Mars and things like that. But those sorts of things will be one-off expeditions unless we can actually build the capability to get to space affordably, routinely, and less expensively than it has been in the past. And that is really the crux of this new plan. It is about developing the capability to maintain U.S. supremacy and competitiveness in space. Look, the Russians can do human spaceflight much less expensively than we do. The Chinese do human spaceflight and will continue to do it more effectively than we do, just because of the designs of vehicles that they have. The Indians, the world is going to pass us by if we keep doing things the way we have. And it's going to be painful for the next few years because we won't have the capability once the shuttle stops to fly people for at least a couple of years. But in the long run, this is exactly what the U.S. space program needs to be focused on.
Now, what some would say, though, is, okay, that's all well and good. We all would like to see a vibrant private sector in space. But why should the government be funding it? If it's a business that can stand on its own, go out and do it.
Well, and that's a great point, except that the government has led the way in developing high-tech industries that have benefited millions in many other areas. You have the Airmail Act, where the government was a customer for the early aviation. You have ARPANET, where the government helped build the infrastructure that later resulted in the internet. You have the railroads, okay? You have places where the government can say, look, this is now to the point. By the way, it's not like we started flying people in space for the first time last year. The first person went into space in 48 years ago. So it's now to the point where the government says, okay, we've proven that this is doable. Now let's actually make it viable for more than just astronauts every year.
Well, so let me ask, do you think then that this is an appropriate investment, in essence, is what you're suggesting, by the taxpayers? Should they be putting down money and staking a bet on the Elon Musks of the world?
What the U.S. taxpayer should be doing is paying for success. And that is what the free market provides. So in this new plan, NASA will buy launch services based on success. If you provide me a flight to the space station, company XYZ, you will be paid. And not the go build us a vehicle that we all know will be over budget, will be over long on schedule, and may or may not ever fly. Okay, that's the way of doing business that has been NASA's modus operandi in the past. And so absolutely, what is in the interest of the U.S. taxpayer is to pay for success and to build capability that will spawn new industries, that will reduce costs, that will have that innovation cycle work in a way that will open up new markets and new jobs and new industries that we can't even yet imagine.
Okay, the laws of physics are the same whether you're in the private sector or you're NASA. How can a company like SpaceX or Orbital do it cheaper than NASA working with United Space Alliance or Lockheed Martin?
Well, look, I'm not sure that the inexpensiveness of it is as big a factor as people point to. Eventually, it's going to get less expensive. We know that the Russians can do it for $50 million a seat. NASA does it for hundreds of millions a seat using the space shuttle technology. Okay, so the Russians aren't any smarter than we are. There are plenty of reasons why we ought to be able to provide space flights for tens of millions of dollars per person. So that's already a big improvement. But second, what you have is, again, it's a mentality of paying for success. It is not that the laws of physics have changed. It is that the paradigm has changed. And the ability to do things like buy purchases in bulk and get economies of scale and apply the business practices of competition to something that has really been a monopoly will extract that value out of here. And so even if the cost only drops a little bit at first, the way of doing business will be that which must produce better results over time.
Can it be done safely?
I think that it will be done more safely. I think that, you know, I've been talking about this a lot, in that the government does not run our airlines. The government does not build our automobiles, okay? The government is there to do things that government can do. But NASA has not been at its best operating space shuttles to and from orbit. NASA was at its best when it went to the moon in the 1960s. NASA ought to do the things NASA can do and let private companies focus on customers. Customers want safety. Customers will pay for safety. If the customer wants safety, the free market will provide the safest solution. You can bet on it. So it is a safer solution in the long run to rely on customer requirements, which will, of course, have safety at the top.
Eric Anderson, CEO of Space Adventures, thank you.
Thank you, Miles.
When I say the word Zeppelin, safety may not be the first thought that comes to mind. Oh, the humanity might. But these days, the Zeppelin is not your grandfather's airship. And in fact, a private company has set up shop selling rides to tourists at NASA's Ames Research Center, trying to prove their business model is more than hot air. Recently, I caught up with the Zeppelin in the LA area, and it was some ride. Oh, the insanity. Mention the word Zeppelin, and most people wouldn't think of this idyllic scene. They probably would think of this. But 72 years after the Hindenburg exploded in New Jersey, husband and wife team Brian and Alexandra Hall have brought the Zeppelin back. All that flammable hydrogen has been replaced with harmless helium, and many other features make it a truly modern airship.
It's not your grandfather's airship. This incorporates all the latest advances in avionics, in envelope material, in airframe material. It's built of carbon fiber and aluminum. We're using 3 Lycoming IO360 engines, where the side engines can vector 120 degrees, and the aft engine controls both a lateral thruster and a primary thruster, which can angle down 90 degrees to either be used to hold the ship down, or it can be used for thrust at takeoff.
The Zeppelin is 14 inches longer than a 747 and carries a dozen passengers, paying anywhere between $200 and $1,500, depending on the length of the trip. Airship Ventures currently offers rides above San Francisco and Los Angeles. The pilots say their job is a privilege. What is the trick to flying a Zeppelin? Is it hard to fly, easy to fly?
The main difference between a Zeppelin and any other aircraft is most other aircraft are very much more fly-by-numbers. Everything is very set, do everything in a set way, at a set time, at a set speed. The Zeppelin is very much fly-by-feel, as are all airships. The Zeppelin very much so fly-by-feel, and that's really the big difference.
The day I flew above LA, the Zeppelin loitered along at 40 miles an hour, 1,000 feet above Long Beach. The ride was extremely quiet and smooth, and the oversized windows made for truly exceptional sightseeing. The beauty of flying in a blimp is you can open the window, hang your head out, and act like your dog. My fellow travelers, well, they were walking on air. How's it feel?
Very comfortable, actually. It's very cool, very pleasant breeze. It's like driving in a convertible car, very pleasant.
I really didn't know what to expect. I never even thought of going up, but it's a lot smoother than I expected.
Yeah, it's very stable.
And I didn't really expect to see all this, I guess.
Yeah.
It's
quite a view.
It's beautiful. You could travel this way all the time.
It's absolutely smooth, quiet. This is a dream come true.
It's not a way to get someplace in a hurry, that's for sure. But this Zeppelin proves sometimes the joy is in the journey. The joy is in the journey. That's our motto here at This Week in Space. And I gotta say, you all have added to the fun for us this week by voting with your mice, sending us a healthy financial booster. We can't thank you enough. We're still working on selling some ads and would love your advice on that. And if you want to pony up, we will love you forever. So check out our site at spaceflightnow.com/twist and give on the PayPal button until it hurts. Or at least give what you give a homeless person on the street, and we promise we won't use it to buy booze. Please send us your comments, laurels and darts are okay, to twist@spaceflightnow.com or tweet us at This Week in Space. You can leave a comment on our blog at milesobrien.com. Next time on This Week in Space, Constellation consternation moves to Capitol Hill, and a hearing chaired by this man, Florida Senator Bill Nelson. The committee will throw some hard ones at NASA Administrator Charlie Bolden. And get this, they've actually asked me to testify. Hopefully I'll get some softballs. We'll see you then.